I'm here with the Reverend Dr. Willie Francois III, who is the president of the Black Church Center for Justice and Equality. How you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Danielle. How are you?
I'm very well.
Amazing.
Yeah, I neglected to offer that, didn't I? I didn't say I was Danielle Dufoe. So I am Danielle Dufoe with you. The first question I have for you, first of all, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
No question.
All right. The first question I do have for you is, what's happening in schools in your community right now? What narratives or stories are Black and Latinx students, parents, and educators fighting to shift in your community?
Sure. In South Jersey, particularly in Atlantic County, our children are experiencing reprehensible forms of school segregation that concentrate poor Black and brown students in one community, and literally 5 minutes away you have other communities, other school districts that are better resourced, that are differently staffed, and the education outcomes there and the life outcomes are different. We're living in a county where you have a predominantly Black and brown school district like Pleasantville that is now attempting to be abandoned by a majority white school district that they've been in a send-receive agreement with for more than a century. And so the narrative that segregation sends to communities of non-white folk, particularly non-white poor folk, is that you're dispensable, that your lives don't hold the same amount of consequence, and that there's a type of contagion that potentially students, non-white students, carry that deserves to be quarantined, deserves to be boxed in, deserves to be over there. And so those narratives of disinheritance, those narratives of criminalization, those narratives of abandonment and undeservedness are ones that are really taking root in schools in communities like mine.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it's been a real pleasure for you to show me personally what this work is about. And I really appreciate that. The next question I have for you is about you personally. We want to know where you grew up. What schools did you go to? Did that narrative impact your experience? The narrative that Black and Latinx students, parents, and educators were not effective, or for some reason not involved in their child's life. Were those kind of narratives a thing?
Sure. I graduated from high school in 2005. So I remember my first week of high school is actually when September 11th happened. So I grew up in Galveston, Texas. I went to school in Lamarck, Texas, a suburb of Galveston. All of that is a part of the metro Houston area of Texas. I went to Lamarck because my mother was the school nurse at the middle school in Lamarck. And so that was my entree into that community. While Lamarck is a majority white town, the high school in Lamarck is majority non-white. It itself has experienced a type of segregative dimension that creates different opportunities for Black and non-white, for Black and brown students and non-white students. So I went to a school that was internally segregated. But even within that school, I often say that I was a part of that first generation of American students that police officers in the building was normalized. So school police was at its genesis when I found myself in middle school and in high school. But even though I went to a majority non-white school, I did benefit from the false meritocracy that is America, that allows a few of us through. The majority of the kids who were in advanced classes were white. I happened to be a part of that cohort. So even though I was at a majority white school, a majority non-white school, most of my relationships in high school were with folk who were white because of what our class assignments were, or other Black kids who benefited from that same kind of false meritocracy.
Wow. Yeah, I always joke with you and say I played Texas Hold'em with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm like, that's wonderful. This next question is about the organizational goals as it is relevant to the work that you're doing with We Are the Dream.
Sure.
What is your organizational goal in working with We Are the Dream? What narratives are you trying to dispel? or put to rest altogether. And what do you see? What do you hope to see with the stories you share?
Sure. It was really it was a compelling opportunity to work with We Are the Dream, because at the Black Church Center, our mission is to amplify progressive Black faith and lay voices as an attempt to reclaim the legacy of the Black radical religious tradition that we get from King, from folk like Zora Neale Hurston, even the James Baldwin kind of approach to his own religious formations. That's the kind of faith modeling that we attempt to reclaim. And working with We the Dream allows us to talk about the church outside of the context of who the preacher is, but really honoring the fact that Black churches are the people who make up the pews. These are Black mothers, these are Black children, these are Black grandfathers to a great extent. And we know that churches are incubators of narratives, right? Incubators of revolution, but doing revolution by narrative organizing, narrative collection. Sanctuaries are sanctuaries for the stories that our lives make, that we bring into our faith lives. And so it was a natural relationship for us to say, how do we tell the voice of the Black church through grandmothers and mothers, through teenage girls, and through college-age young men? How do we tell the story of the Black church? Through the stories of struggle and survival of Black folks. So it's our hope that we're able to use the stories of ordinary Black church folk in South Jersey to tell a story of power, to tell a story of resilience, but also to tell a story of repair. We're primarily disrupting the narratives of segregation, which says certain lives are less important, but also the narrative of criminalization. We know that there is a carceral continuum, a prison apparatus that doesn't start at schools, but starts at the front door of our neighborhoods, as you have these poverty to prison pathways. You have dilapidated school to prison pathways. And so we want to tell the story that behind these narratives of incarceration, behind these narratives of failed infrastructure, behind these narratives of school segregation are brilliant minds, resilient parents, people who are committed to life advancement of people who've been abandoned.
You've got yourself work cut out for you. You certainly got the work cut up for you. You already mentioned it. You're doing a lot of great work here in South Jersey and Pleasantville. Specifically, the work you've been doing with We Are the Dream is that work. And you are also, I didn't tell the folks that I should tell them, you are also the senior pastor of Mount Zion Baptist Church in the Pleasantville, New Jersey. And as a New Jerseyan, I'm always thrilled that you have your talent and your talents and all that God has given you here in South Jersey.
I love it.
And so our next question is certainly about engaging folks. How can folks get involved? And what advice would you give those who want to take action?
Sure. So currently we're engaged in a statewide campaign around desegregation, where we are mobilizing school districts, we're mobilizing school district leaders, parents, students, to tell their stories around the harmful, odious effects of school segregation. In New Jersey, we're progressive, we're liberal, but that has not stopped us from being the sixth most segregated state when it comes to school segregation. And so if you want to get involved, there's some wonderful work that we are doing at the Black Church Center with Building One America. And so you can go to buildingoneamerica.org and find ways to sign up, find ways to be a part of our local town halls, our local hearings, where we are literally collecting the stories of ordinary people as they talk about their survival instinct, their survival narratives within deeply segregated spaces, but also how we are building power one household at a time, one pew at a time, to take on these harmful, devastating effects of segregation that are being upheld by Democrats in New Jersey.
That's energizing work. That's great. Before we close, please share with us, the viewing audience, your dream of what a liberated educational school system would be like for students, educators, and parents.
I think schools should be sanctuaries for children. It should be a place where children have high quality food that's healthy, safe drinking water, educators who are sympathetic to the lives that students come to school out of, that are so often marked by poverty and by divestment, that they will have administrators who care more about what students need than their paychecks and their own individualized needs. We need places where students are not learning to a test, but students are actually learning to practice habits of a complete life. Schools are sanctuaries, but schools are also the place where democracies are learned about, protected, and expanded. So that's what we need. We need schools that honor the fact that there are different communities that need more than other communities. We need schools that understand that children are infinitely endowed with unlimited possibilities. We need schools that are teaching children how to be the answers to some of the most pressing questions and problems that we face here in the world.
Reverend Dr. Francois, it was a great pleasure sitting with you today. You actually pack a powerful and mighty transformative punch, if I could put it that way. Again, this has been Danielle Dufoe with the Reverend Dr. Willie Dwayne Francois III of the Black Church Center for Justice and Equity. Thanks so much. You have a good day.
Peace.